I certainly wasn't expecting something like this to happen.
I had a barrage of text messages, and that's when my stress levels went through the roof because something had gone wrong.
I've always considered myself to be reasonably fit. Not like super athletic, but I grew up in North Wales in Snowdonia, so I'd got the mountains in my back garden and lakes and the sea, so I was kind of always either on the mountains or on the water. And then in my 20s and 30s, I had a stint where I spent quite a lot of time doing a lot of rock climbing and mountaineering in the Alps. It's all relative. I know people who are much fitter than me, much stronger athletes. I would hardly call myself an athlete, but I'm certainly not a couch potato. But as I've got older, I'm 51 now, and it's certainly true that I'm not as active as I used to be, and I've got fibromyalgia. I think I'm certainly more prone to injury and illness than I was when I was younger, which is no big surprise. But I certainly wasn't expecting something like this to happen.
I had a barrage of text messages, and that's when my stress levels went through the roof because something had gone wrong. I was definitely feeling a bit apprehensive about this passage. Not because I doubted Andy's ability, but because I wasn't on board, which is abnormal. Because we'd spent so long on the south coast and Alaska had been born while we'd been down there, we decided that it was best for me to bring the car back, which I had because of my dad, back to North Wales, and for the two Andys and Jack to do just one long passage all the way up to Wales.
Over the last 2 or 3 years, I think, on this boat we've sailed over 1,500 miles of coastal sailing, exploring a large part of the Welsh and English coast. But this trip was definitely the longest single trip that we had embarked on. And I was pretty excited for it, to be honest. We set off from Torquay at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was great visibility. The weather forecast was lovely, the boat was on song, everything was working perfectly. Torquay was as normal, full of other boats and dinghies out racing, and we just really got into the groove pretty quickly, got the sails up, got the hydrovane working for the first time properly. We've had the hydrovane on the boat for a long time, but it was nice to finally get to use it properly.
I was very excited for Jack because he was really keen to do the overnight sails and do a big long passage up to North Wales, but there was just a little bit of apprehension just for the fact that I wasn't there to make sure that they were all okay.
This stretch of coastline was pretty familiar to us now. We'd been sort of backwards and forwards along there a fair bit. So we were passing some places that we knew well. We were passing Dartmouth and then Start Point, start point's a headland, and we'd already made the decision to stay wide around the headlands if possible, so that we could avoid the sort of turbulent water that you get if you get too close into rocks like that. Once we're around start point, we set course for the Lizard. The Lizard is the most southerly point of the UK if you're not from Britain. You know, I've been around it quite a few times now in several different boats and several different conditions. And on this particular day, it was an absolute mill pond. There was nothing to think about at all compared to the previous year when Melissa had gone past. She'd never been round the Lizard, so the previous year it was pretty bad conditions, and I took the kids by land in the car because Melissa wanted to do it on a day where the weather was pretty gnarly, and she did it with a few mates, and it was quite a spicy passage. By comparison, going the opposite direction on this particular day, it was no dramas at all. Because this was going to be quite a long passage, we set up a watch system. So we got myself, one of my best mates, Andy Darlington, who's a great sailor, great guy, very well informed, very experienced. He's got his own boat and he works on the Challenge Wales boat. And we've got Jack, my son, who's 13. He's going to be 14 in November, and he's a competent sailor as well. Now, of course, we didn't put Jack on watch at night. The way that we were doing it was during the day. It was very kind of relaxed watch system, theoretically 3 on 3 off, and when Jack was on watch, he would have at least myself or Andy with him in the cockpit. Even if he was the one on watch, there would be another adult with him in the cockpit. Jack wasn't going to be doing night watches at all, of course, being 13. Just absolutely love this, being out there just at the hydrobane steering us. I'm coming off watch, so I'm going to go and get my head down. Andy's going to put a tack in shortly with Jack, who's just chilling in the cockpit. But you know, we're on life at an angle, which is pretty awesome. By the time it was getting dark, we were crossing the bay from sort of start point across to the Lizard, with Plymouth way up in the north. We can just about see the lights on the horizon. But although there isn't much for you to see, this is just gorgeous. It's a clear night. There's a trillion stars for me to look at. The bright moon, a half moon. But we were a long way out, and again, no issues at all. The wind was perfect. The wave height and the sea state was grand. We were having a fantastic time. The hydrovane was doing all the work on the steering side, so it was just all in all a super relaxed night. Funny thing when you do coastal passages and you're offshore, you know, sort of 10 miles out or whatever, because you go off watch at, you know, whatever time it is, and you can see the Lizard. And you wake up 3 hours later and come back up on watch, and you're still going around the Lizard because you're taking a very wide arc, you know, round this headland. And the advantage of going closer into shore is that the terrain moves past faster, but the sea state is worse. So, but the demoralising thing, if you can put it that way, is the terrain goes past a lot slower when you're a long way out. About 6 hours to go to Lizard Point, to the Lizard. Everybody, I'm back on watch. Andy's gone down to have some shut-eye. I've just had 2.5–3 hours of sleep. Really nice. got coffee on the go. We are rounding the lizards as we speak. You can see, maybe you can see the lizard out the window here. Can you see that lighthouse flashing? That's the lizard. And we're doing 6.5 knots, 7 knots, 6 knots. So, between 6 and 7 knots. There's no wind still. We've only got 9 knots of wind. So yeah, engine's still on at the minute. We wanted to do this passage in one hit. It was just about 300 miles, I think, and it was our sort of my personal goal to try and get there in one go. You know, it'd have been really, really cool. But you know, not everything goes to plan, and one of the pipes in the engine room had obviously come free of its mounting and rubbed against the alternator pulley. So that looks like the problem. It's rubbed against the fan belt there. So it had burst, and we didn't notice because at that point I think the wind had dropped and we were motoring. And the noise of the engine, just, you know, we just didn't notice it. So our water tank had emptied. We've only got one water tank operational at the moment, and that had emptied itself into the bilge. So we got no fresh water except for some bottles of drinking water. And that meant that we had to go into Newlyn fishing port to do a quick little repair and refill up the water tanks. Look at this. This is what dawn is like for us. Last time we came that direction, it was horrendous. And now, it's a pussycat. No problems at all. So, yeah, everything out here is fine and tickety-boo. Boat is looking tidy. We've got our fenders in the dinghy. The weather forecast is extremely benign for this trip, so we're not expecting any big bumps or hitches, and we're popping over to Newlyn to fill our water tanks and repair the little leaked tube. Should be in Newlyn in about 2.5–3 hours, something like that. It's about 15 miles across the bay. So a nice steady run. Newlyn's a great harbour. We've been in there several times before. Normally we raft up against the fisheries boat because we're quite a big vessel and quite deep, and they normally, if we're going to be staying there a couple of days, they put us rafted against the fisheries boat. But on this occasion, because we're only in for a few minutes, we were just doing the repair, so we rafted on the hammerhead. There's your culprit. That had rubbed on the alternator pulley, so I've cut that out and put a joiner piece in. Did I show you that? I don't know. I'm in a rush and I'm tired. Engine's back running again. We've filled up the water tank, so we've now got water. We're going to nip into a different marina to get diesel. And the intention was then also to go into Penzance. Because Newlyn is a commercial fishing port, they don't sell diesel to leisure yachts, so we wanted to go round to Penzance to fuel up. I'd done the last watch of the night shift, so I'd been up since sort of, I think, 5 a.m. So it's kind of 5, 6, 7, and then we'd got into Newlyn at about 8:30, 9 o'clock. We filled up the water tank about 9:30, and then by the time we were out of there, it was kind of 10:30, getting on 11. So I actually went for my first sleep of the day as we were approaching Land's End and Longship's lighthouse. Okay, so mission accomplished partially. We got we got water at Newlyn. We were not able to get fuel at Penzance because it's a tidal fuel berth, and we missed the gate filling, doing those bits and pieces. So that's not a problem. We have got enough fuel. We may pop into Milford Haven on the way to North Wales just to get some fuel there, but it all depends how we get on with the sailing. I just know that we haven't got enough fuel to motor the entire way if we had to do that. But why would we need to motor the entire way? There's the option to go outside the lighthouse, which is one way, but we'd got the timing just right to go through the break between Longships and the headland. So that was fantastic. Again, it was beautiful, but I was asleep for the whole thing. So I asked Jack to take some footage. Jack, of course, being a 13-year-old, he's gone to that stage now where he doesn't particularly want to talk on camera and all of that, gets a bit camera shy, which is completely fine. I think I was the same at 13, but he got some great footage as we were going through Longships. Once you go round Longships and you're heading north up the Bristol Channel towards Bristol, and you've got Padstow on the north coast, and then you've got the South Welsh coast, and they funnel together. So of course when the tide comes out, it's absolutely ferocious coming down there, and it's coming down from the Irish Sea as well. So when the tide turns against you, as it inevitably does on a passage like this, you have it with you for 6 hours and then against you for 6 hours. And when the tide turns against you, it can be pretty strong. The other thing to consider in this particular patch as well is there's a thing called the TSS, which is a traffic separation scheme. And basically it's like a motorway on the sea. I'm not sure if you can see that, but can you see those pink lines delineating two pale pink kind of roads, one going north and one going south? That area there is for all the commercial shipping traffic, so it's got quite a lot of dense traffic in it. We're staying well out of it. You can cross it if you need to, but we weren't going to do that. We certainly didn't want to stray into it because it's full of shipping tankers and big commercial vessels. But obviously when we get to the end of that TSS, all those boats that kind of come off that ocean motorway either go off towards Ireland or off towards North Wales or off up the Bristol Channel or wherever they want to go. So it could get a little bit hectic. So we'd got the northeasterly wind coming down the Bristol Channel, down from South Wales. And at times we'd got the tide with the wind, and at times we've got the tide against the wind. All the sails are up. We're motor sailing because I want to be able to pinch tight to the wind. If I turn the engine off and sail, we'll have to bear away a little bit, and it will take us into that traffic separation scheme, unless we do a big tack up to starboard. So to enable me to just get a little bit tighter to the wind direction, I've got the engine on so that I can pinch up a little bit, and it's just giving us an extra half a knot. We're punching the tide at the moment, doing 4.8 knots. In a short while, maybe an hour, the tide will turn in our favour. We'll be clear of the TSS, so if we go over to port towards Ireland, it won't matter. In fact, it'll probably be a good thing because we'll get more speed. The combination of that meant that, of course, the tendency was to drift to our port side towards Ireland, as it were, and into that traffic separation scheme. So During my next off watch, Andy put a tack in to try and head up the Bristol Channel to the east.
The first time I started to worry about them a little bit was when they were crossing the Bristol Channel. I was watching AIS and my friend called me and said, "Is everything okay out there?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "Well, they look like they're going into Padstow. I wonder if they've got some problems." And then I checked back into AIS. The course that they were on made it look like they were heading to Padstow. So I was like, okay, I can't get hold of them because they're now offshore. But I'm sure everything's fine.
We have Starlink communications on the boat. So you would think, that we could stay in touch with people, no problem at all. But because we don't have the offshore package, which is really expensive, once you get 12 miles offshore, it switches off. So our only communications then are VHF radio, of course, because you're outside of a mobile phone cell network. We carry 3 radios on the boat. We've got the ICOM M505, which has got a standard antenna on the mast, and we've got another ICOM handheld radio with GPS and AIS, and then we've got another spare ICOM handheld radio. So we're well catered for in the radio department if something goes wrong, and we were constantly monitoring the Met Office, the shipping forecast and the weather situation on the radio.
And then I checked back in a bit later and they clearly put a tack in and they were back going up the Bristol Channel. So that sort of settled my nerves a bit because I was wondering why they were going towards Padstow.
That tack actually was a great idea, but in practice the wind angle meant that we were pretty much going due east and we weren't making any progress north at all. In fact, I think Melissa and several other people watching on AIS actually thought that we'd got a problem when we were heading in towards Padstow. We did know that Storm Erin was coming across the Atlantic.
Look at Erin and how it's likely to influence our weather and what it's likely to do as it comes across the Atlantic. What then happens is it's quite likely now to head northwards up towards Iceland, and so some model tracks do still bring it closer towards the UK.
Now there's some bad weather coming our way, which is why we wanted to leave Newlyn fairly sharpish. The bad weather is coming in late tonight, early hours of tomorrow morning. And I say bad, it's force 7 to 8 at sea state, moderate. Moderate doesn't mean moderate, moderate means horrible. So we want to get as far north as we possibly can and run ahead of that if we possibly can. We were expecting the kind of tail end of Storm Erin to catch up with us at some point. Jack is on the helm. On that. We're doing about 6 knots. We've got 20 knots of wind, there or thereabouts. We're pinching quite upwind, as I say, so we're really close hauled, bladed in nice and tight, because I want to try and get north, and the wind's just in the wrong place. So we're across towards Ireland at the moment, which is fine, because we can always go back across later. We'll put a tack in. Horses for courses. On this kind of length of passage, you've got multiple options about how to deal with that. In a little while I might think about setting up the hydrovane again, but at the minute Jack's hand steering, which is always good. It's good to get practice hand steering. Look at that. Fabulous. there we are. We've now got, I tidied up a couple of things on deck, which I can't believe were left out there. That's my fault, so I should have checked earlier, but they weren't causing a problem, but it's just bad show, old man. Hydra Vane is steering the boat. Jack is back in his customary position, sat up there. And we're batting along almost north, but not quite north. We're keeping an eye out for ships coming out of the TSS, as I say. And this is our night now, I think. We'll just have to make adjustments to things as the wind veers round to our east. It'll change how the sails are set up, of course, and how the wind hits us. So, and I think that's going to be like this up until midnight, and then after midnight it should change a little bit, but we shall see. As for now, what a beautiful evening. By this point, it's a long sail.
Somewhere in the Bristol Channel, the AIS stopped updating. I wasn't too concerned because it wasn't that many hours ago that I spoke to Andy, and he said that everything was great, and they were just before they headed into the Bristol Channel.
We've been sailing a long time. We've been doing watches. We're fine. We're in good shape. The boat's going great. The sea state is building, but it's totally manageable. The situation is picking up. Waves are getting bigger. The wind is getting stronger, as we said it would. The wind is building, totally manageable. Everything on the boat is working. It's good. We're all in good spirits, just starting to feel a little bit tired, but all fine. I came up after one of my off watches, one of my rest periods, to find that Andy had a problem with the mizzen boom. The mizzen boom sheet attachment is riveted to the underneath of the boom, and the rivets had just ripped clean out. So the mizzen boom had been flying around, potentially really dangerous situation. Fortunately, it's way at the back of the boat, so nobody got hurt. But he'd got to the back, put a strop over it, secured the mizzen boom, and Bob's your uncle, it was all done. But it just kind of shows how some of the waves were hitting the boat sideways on. It was putting quite a lot of strain on the vessel. That kind of strain isn't just being put on the boat, it's being put on the crew as well. So our second night was certainly more eventful than our first. Second night we had set our course back north again after that tack east. We were heading up, as I say, for the gap between St David's and Wexford and Ireland. We're a long way out, and but everything was going fine apart from the issue with the mizzen boom and the weather and the wind starting to build. And it built sort of steadily throughout the night until by dawn things were great, but certainly more spicy than they had been earlier in the passage. for that reason, Andy and I had a little chat about preparing for the next night. It was, you know, still only like 9 or 10 in the morning on our third day, and we decided to reef the main.
Later on that day, I had a phone call from Liz just checking in to see if I'd heard from them, because she was also watching AIS. I hadn't heard anything, but we both discussed that, you know, last time we checked, they looked like they were on a good course, so we'll just wait maybe until they got closer to land and hope that it updated.
We're going to put a reef in. In fact, I think we're going to go straight to reef 2, because then we want to stay on that sail plan all night, and we can easily reduce the head sail and just balance the sail plan that way. So we're going to put 2 reefs in, and then we're not having to think about going out and putting the second reef in the dark. To reef a mainsail on a sailing boat, you actually, on most sailing boats, you actually lower the sail down. You slacken off the rope, the halyard it's called, that pulls the sail up, and you lower the sail down. You then have a couple of eyelets that you can attach at one end and the other end of the boom to hold it down in that lower position. There are different ways of doing it, and then you rewind the sail back up again to make it nice and tight, but then that overall sail is smaller. Most boats have different reefing positions and different reefing sizes. Our boat's got 3. The third reef is really tiny. That's for storm sailing, so we didn't need that, but we did anticipate possibly needing a second reef. So we actually put that second reef in straight away. Rather than putting in the first reef and making the sail a bit smaller, we put the second reef in straight away. And the reason being was we didn't want to find ourselves in a situation where we'd needed that second reef and the sea was even bigger, and it was dark and potentially raining, and we were more tired. So we just thought, let's just go for reef 2 straight away. So Andy and I are just getting togged up for that. Jack is safe in the cockpit. Everybody's got life jackets. Everybody's going to be tethered on, because it's a lot more brisk and choppy than it was yesterday. So you can probably see this is quite big seas now. The head sail, by contrast, is much easier to reef. You can pull a line and the sail wraps around itself, a little bit like a tape measure. But you pull it out, you pull another line, furling line, and it wraps the sail back up. So you can do that much easier. And it means that you can balance the power coming from the mainsail and the head sail. By this point, of course, everybody's wearing life jackets and is clipped on whenever they're outside the cockpit. Earlier on in the passage, the conditions were so flat and so calm that, you know, we were comfortable in the cockpit with the sides down without a life jacket on, and I think most sailors are like that. I may take a different stance on that after this trip, to be dead honest. But certainly going out of the cockpit, doing any work on the foredeck, other than just having a brief look, if you're doing anything, doing any work, reefing sails, securing things down, the rule is life jacket on and a tether, so you can clip yourself onto stuff. So you are not going in the water, and if you do, you've got a modern, in-date life jacket, you know, with all of the spec that it should be. So Andy and I got togged up, foul weather jackets. I preferred to just wear my shorts because it was really quite warm, but offshore jacket, life jacket, tether, all the rest of it, and off we went to reef the mainsail. If you've done any sailing, you'll know the power that is in a sail. It's huge. So the only way that you can relax that sail to make it come down and fall down so you can make it smaller is to depower the sail.
You want to throw your head sail away?
If you turn the boat to head directly into the wind, if the wind's coming straight from where you are, say, then the sail's got no aerodynamic shape and it just flogs and flaps around. Yeah, I think we're in for a rough night. We're just going to start the engine so we can head up into wind, because in order to put the reef in, we've got to be facing directly into the wind. There's no power in the sail. That means motoring towards straight into the wind to do that. Which sounds really violent, it sounds really intimidating, or it can do. So you get this huge amount of noise and this chaos, but the sail's got no power in it. And at that point you can release the sail and pull the sail down, release the halyard, pull the sail down and make it smaller. And we pulled down to the second reef, attached on a piece of line called a Cunningham to keep the tack nice and tight. Pulled the reefing lines nice and snug. And then winched the sail back up to make the luff really nice and tight, so you still get a really lovely sail shape. It's why and a lot of sailors like slab reefing. Once we'd put the reef in, something else we noticed was Jack has a kayak, you know, a plastic moulded kayak which he loves to use, and we'd strapped that on the outside of the guardrail at the front of the boat. It's all a learning curve, isn't it? And in hindsight that was stupid. So when the nose was going into these big waves, it was absolutely smashing this canoe, kayak, and the strain of the kayak was actually wrenching on the guardrails, the posts, they're called stanchion posts, the guardrails. Didn't do them any damage, but it would have done if we'd have let it. So we decided while we were up on the foredeck to pull the kayak over onto the foredeck as well. We were basically just having a fantastic time. Yes, the weather was building and you know, the sea state was building a bit, but we were having an absolutely brilliant time. You know, it wasn't daunting or frightening in any sense, and we'd had, you know, some fairly calm conditions early on in the passage with quite a bit of motoring or motor sailing, so it was great to finally have the wind to sail properly and a sea state which was challenging enough to make us just have that little sense of kind of exhilaration and excitement. That was an absolute beast of a job, because the boat was just pounding into the waves and burying the nose. I got absolutely soaked. Anyway, we got the canoe kayak onto the foredeck, slid it to the aft deck, lashed it back on. Job's a good one then, we thought. We're now set up. We're much better now. Down below in the forepeak, something had been developing that we hadn't really been aware of. The forepeak hatch seal was leaking really badly. I'd got our grey tender on the foredeck, securely lashed down, but I got it the normal right way up, and that was a mistake. I should have had it upside down, because as the nose of the boat was burying in the waves, it was forcing water, hitting the front of the dinghy and forcing it downwards like a jet washer, and it was hitting the hatch with such force that it was forcing the water in around the rubber seal. We actually serviced that hatch last year, and we put new handles on, and you thought, oh, that's great. We tested it with a hose pipe and it was, you know, perfect, sweet, no leaks at all. But by golly, it leaked. I was in the forepeak trying to have some shut-eye, and a wave hit, and it sprayed out from around the hatch horizontally, soaked everything, and I mean everything. Soaked me, soaked every single item of clothing in the forepeak, drenched the mattresses, were just sopping wet. All the bedclothes were sopping wet. But worse still, a lot of our camera gear and our MacBook bit the dust. Because I'd put them in the forepeak because I was thinking, well, that's probably the driest place on the boat. How wrong was I? So we have one MacBook to edit on and a selection of fairly old ropey camera gear, and now that is much depleted because salt water kills electronics instantly. The cameras were on and backing up footage, and the MacBook was on backing up footage, and the salt water just killed a lot, just dead. So that's another situation we need to resolve. After Andy and I had sorted out the reefs and kind of battled with the kayak, I felt kind of a bit dizzy and a little bit nauseous. I do get seasick from time to time. I'm not somebody that doesn't suffer with seasickness. And I just thought, oh, you know, you've just overexerted yourself, you're feeling a bit queasy. And I figured, you know, I'd been on the foredeck, I'd been sorting out the sails, I'd been sorting out the kayak, and I was just felt a little bit, the word I would use is wafty. A bit sweaty, felt like my blood pressure had dropped. So I said to Andy, it was his watch anyway, and I said, I'm going to go and put the kettle on, get a drink, and I'm just going to take 5 and lie down for a minute. I'm feeling a little bit, whew. And he said, yeah, no problem, no problem. So Andy and Jack were in the cockpit, and I came and lay down in the saloon. And about, I guess, 10 minutes later, the chest pain went from uncomfortable to alarming. It was like everything you've ever seen on a poster or read in a leaflet. It was like somebody had tightened a belt around my chest, or an elephant was sitting on my chest. I was sweating buckets. And as I said, it was warm, but it wasn't hot. I was pouring with sweat. I think the sweat was actually a response to the pain. You know, I've never had that before, where I've had a pain at such a level that it actually made my body perspire. I've never experienced that really. Maybe with back pain I've sort of had a mild experience of that, but this was something else. So I did what most people do, and I ignored it. And I thought, it'll just go away in a minute, you know, catch your breath, stop being a wuss, and you'll be fine in a minute. Don't be a drama queen. But after about, I guess, quarter of an hour of this pain staying the same or arguably getting worse, I started to feel really uneasy. I started to feel like the pain was unmanageable, and I started to feel like, oh, you know, this could actually be something quite bad. I guess you could call it, I hesitate to use the term because it sounds dramatic, but I guess you could call it almost an impending sense of doom. And if you're in the medical trade, the medical profession, you'll probably laugh to hear somebody say that, but it's a real thing. You get this kind of impending sense of doom. So I indicated to Andy that I actually felt like it would be a good idea if we made port. And we were 25 miles off of St David's Head and in a position where we could go into the anchorage at Dale. I don't know why I suggested going to the anchorage and not straight into the marina. I guess I just really wasn't thinking straight. I just was like, not thinking straight. Andy then came down a little while later and said, well, hang on, the wind's in the east now, northeast, east-northeast, and Dale Anchorage won't be protected, really, from that. So how about we go straight to Milford Haven Marina? Some time went by and I, again, was getting more alarmed and more uncomfortable and more upset, really, with the condition in my chest. I was finding it very difficult to breathe. Just because taking a deep breath was so painful. So I was finding I had to breathe quite shallow to control the pain.
Later on that day, I had a barrage of text messages, and that's when my stress levels went through the roof because something had gone wrong.
So I said to Andy, listen, when we get to Milford, you know, I probably ought to pop to A&E. And we've got no transport, so it might not be a bad idea, being as I've got chest pain, to have an ambulance on standby at Milford Haven for when we get there. You know, just ask them to have an ambulance waiting at the marina, or, you know, prepped, ready to pick us up, because I probably shouldn't go by taxi or something with the way I'm feeling.
So those messages were Andy just keeping me informed. He was sending messages not knowing that they weren't going through, just explaining that he was having some chest pain and that they'd requested an ambulance on shore. And then the next message was that he was struggling to breathe, but he was okay. He just kept reassuring me that he was okay. But I could tell by the messages he wasn't feeling okay.
Andy then radioed to get some advice. And that's when we discovered that for some unknown reason, our primary VHF wasn't functioning correctly. No idea why, no idea. It had been working fine throughout the entire trip. We'd been using it for the weather forecasting. So Andy used the handheld radio, which is, you know, a decent one. And not decent enough to reach shore, but he got in touch with another boat in the area called Celtic Wildcat, to whom we shall be forever grateful. And Celtic Wildcat relayed the message, which is a standard practice. If you're further away than your radio can reach, you can bounce a signal from one boat to another. It's either called a Mayday relay or a Pan-Pan relay. And obviously this wasn't a Mayday situation, but I think Andy did a Pan-Pan, which is medical assistance required. And that message was relayed by Celtic Wildcat. The message that came back from the Coast Guard was that they felt it was appropriate to dispatch the rescue services, in this case the helicopter, because, let's face it, you've got a 51-year-old male 25 miles out at sea complaining of severe chest pain. And hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? And with my rational hindsight mind in place, it's like, well, duh. The message came through that the helicopter was coming out, and my immediate feeling was one of guilt, because I was thinking, oh shit, I was hoping to stay on the boat with my son Jack, get into harbour, pop up to A&E for a quick checkup to confirm that I'm fine, while Andy and Jack get fish and chips. At no point had I thought this was going to result in me leaving the boat.
The last message I had was that he was being airlifted off the boat and that he would keep me posted, but then it just went silent.
I wasn't worried about Jack or Andy because the boat had been working fine, and they're both very capable, and I certainly had no concerns about leaving Jack in Andy's capable hands. You know, it was absolutely fine. But I was just completely racked with guilt for everything that was happening. And I think that actually made me feel even worse, if possible. Just goes to show, you know, emotions can have real big sort of genuine physical manifestations.
Obviously by that point I was in a state of panic. I knew that Andy was had been or was being airlifted off the boat, and I knew that my son was on the boat. I was worried about him. I was worried about how he was feeling, but I was confident in Andy Darlington's ability to look after Jack and look after the boat, because, you know, he's a very good friend and we know how he is with Jack. So I wasn't like major meltdown, but I was very worried about how Jack was feeling and what was going on out there, because I didn't know what the sea state was like or anything. I just knew that Jack now didn't have his dad on the boat.
Sometime later, Andy said that they could hear the helicopter in the distance, and pretty quickly I could hear it as well. And then the helicopter kind of circled for a while, and eventually the message came through that they didn't feel that they could lift me off of our boat for two reasons. One, obviously being a sailboat, being a yacht, we've got a lot of rigging, and that posed a potential big problem for them, especially with the mizzen mast. And secondly, the sea state by this point was pretty gnarly, and the boat was, you know, pitching up and down, rocking, you know. So they requested that the RNLI send out their Tamar class boat to assist, and which they duly did, and that took probably, I don't actually know how long that took. I'm guessing an hour or something, maybe a bit more. But in the meantime, the Celtic Wildcat was still shadowing us, the helicopter was still shadowing us, so, you know, we're fine. And I'm just lying down below in the saloon thinking, oh my God, what have I done? You know, is this just a load of fuss about nothing? And you know, should I tell them to go away and cancel the whole thing and just man up? You know, it's just a bit of pain. It's a completely stupid way to think. So the lifeboat eventually arrived in the area. I say eventually, they were really quick. And I came up on deck to get ready to be transferred from Ocean Melody to the lifeboat so that I could be airlifted off the lifeboat, because it's a more suitable platform for the airlift. So Andy and Jack are the heroes of this story, really, because they managed the boat, they managed me, and, you know, Andy stopped me from falling in the water, because I genuinely felt on the verge of collapse when I was outside there waiting to be transferred across. That went super smoothly. The RNLI, again, heroes, came up alongside and very swiftly got me from our boat onto theirs. It happened in the blink of an eye. Escorted me to the back of the boat, to the stern, where I was able to sort of catch my breath a little bit. At this point I was really distraught with the pain, the exertion and the emotion of it, really. which is kind of embarrassing to admit, but, you know, tell it like it is. The paramedic then came down on the cable from the helicopter and quickly got me into the harness to be lifted, and that again, it happened in an absolute flash. 1 minute I was on the back of the boat, next minute I'm up in the air, next minute I'm being pulled into the helicopter itself, and from that point on everything felt pretty familiar, because being a paramedic myself, I'm super familiar with the process involved of wiring somebody up to check if they're having a heart attack. I remember the paramedic who attended me saying she was, you know, she felt that I looked like this was cardiac in origin. She didn't say it looks like a heart attack, but I knew what she was saying. It looks cardiac in origin. You look like an MI, she said. And I knew I did. You know, I was sweating and pale and clammy.
I eventually got a message from Jack, obviously when they got closer to land, the Starlink reconnected, and he told me that he was fine, he was just wet and miserable, and he was just asking how his dad was, which I didn't know at that point, but I obviously told Jack that as soon as I could, I would give him an update, and for him to just keep in touch with me. So we regularly sent messages to each other, and Jack sort of updated me and sent me some photos and stuff. And although he was concerned about his dad, the biggest thing was he was a bit disappointed that they didn't carry on all the way round to North Wales, because he really wanted to do that whole passage, bless him. Now I knew that Jack was okay, my worry shifted back to Andy. Obviously he was on his way to hospital, so I knew he was in good hands, but I was panicking about what was wrong with him.
I was unable to be taken by helicopter to South Wales because of fueling issues. The helicopter had come from Cornwall, I think, and so I got taken to Truro Hospital, and it was incredible. I was straight in. I had every test under the sun.
I eventually got a message, a very garbled message from Andy, saying that he was in hospital in Cornwall.
I'd had a fair bit of morphine at this point, and I was still in quite a lot of pain. They do a series of tests to check an enzyme in your heart muscle called troponin, because even the ECG is not diagnostic of a heart attack of an MI, STEMI or NSTEMI. You still need a blood test to check your troponin levels.
I think the message came through just after he arrived at the hospital, and they said that they handed him over with a potential NSTEMI, I think it's called. I was in the Midlands with the car at my sister's with a newborn baby and a toddler, and I didn't know where to go. Obviously Alaska needs me all the time. Ollie I could have left with my sister, but I didn't know whether to go to Cornwall to go to Andy, or to go to Pembrokeshire to Wales to go to Jack. So they were thinking that he'd had a heart attack.
Previous to this journey, about 2 weeks before, I'd had a kind of cough, cold, flu-y type, man flu if you like, virus. Not a bacterial infection, just a simple virus, and it had sort of given me a few cold symptoms, knocked me about a bit, and I got over that. And then 2 days before we left, in fact, I think even literally the day before we left, I spent a lot of time up the mast. We've got a mast ladder that you pull up, you put it into the track in the mast that the sail runs up, and you hoist it, and then you can climb up, clipping yourself on, of course. But it's a really quick way to get up and down the mast. I was, checking the wiring on the VHF antenna, sorting that out, sorting out some wiring on the lights and what have you. And all in all, I probably went up and down the mast 8 or more times in the space of 2 days. And again, being 51 and probably a little bit rounder and more rotund than I used to be, a little bit heavier, a little bit weaker. I could feel it the next day in my pectoral muscle, my biceps and my back. And I was like, oh, I certainly can feel I've done some work. And I had a bit of chest pain, but I put that down to musculoskeletal strain from just going up and down the mast. Yeah, I can't send down the orange stringers at the same time, it's too thick. So that's fine. I'm just going to send down the stuff for this light now, what to do. Something I didn't twig was that this chest pain I'd got was growing. I think maybe I just put it down to sitting in the cockpit for a few days. But what I should have noticed is that when I lay back, even now, when I lay back and reclined, it was worse. And when I leant forwards, it was better. And that didn't even twig with me. It didn't even register. And that is a sign of a particular condition. Viruses are funny things. You can't have antibiotics for a virus, as we all know. And, if you get a chest infection, a viral chest infection, you can have a cold or flu and it can travel to your chest and you end up with a viral chest infection. And we all know, we've all had that. We all know how flipping uncomfortable it can be. It can make breathing really painful. Same if you get an infection in your throat. Anyway, overnight, lots of other tests were run, MRIs, I think, and chest x-ray. I was kind of out of it with the pain and the morphine. I don't remember exactly what they did. But by morning, it was pretty evident that it was basically not a heart attack. The heart sits in a sac, a balloon, if you will, called the pericardium, which has got a fluid in it to allow the heart to expand and contract. It's like a lubricant. And if you get an infection in the pericardium, that can stem from a virus such as I had, and it can obviously it can just be like a virus traveling to your chest or traveling to your throat. It can travel to the lining of your heart, which was the main takeaway. It was the backlash of this virus that I'd had, which had affected me. So the treatment for that is, it's not bacterial, it's a virus, so it's inflammation, anti-inflammatories, it's anti-ibuprofen. There are other drugs that they can give if it flares up and gets worse. Eventually they can give you steroids if it really creates big problems, but usually not necessary, and anti-inflammatories usually do the trick. And what I can say is I have never been so scared in all my life. I had no clue that this kind of thing could look and feel so much like a heart attack, despite many years as a paramedic, despite my training. But experiencing it myself was a wild experience. It was wildly different. And it's all very well, seeing it in other people, but you don't fully appreciate just how scary that situation is until you go through it yourself. And you see patients in our job. You see patients with those conditions. Enough to have some appreciation of just how uncomfortable and horrible these things are. But experiencing it yourself, whoa, that was wild.
Then I went, updated Jack and let him know that his dad was okay and he was talking to me. That was my biggest relief, is that Andy was able to send messages to me. Now, I was in the Midlands with my sister. So for that moment in time, I just decided to sit tight and try not to panic too much and just wait to find out that Jack had got in okay and that Andy was okay.
While I was in hospital, the RNLI ended up towing Ocean Melody in. And why, you may ask? Because she was running absolutely fine. Well, right when we didn't need it to happen, the flipping engine wouldn't start. So it turned out afterwards to just be a little bit of gunge that had been picked up from the bottom of the tank and had blocked one of the filters. And it was no more than that. But at the time, it was kind of, well, there's no way you're going to be able to take the whole fuel system apart in a big sea like that and figure that out. But it had just blocked. We've got, between our diesel tank and the primary filter, I've got an inline facet pump that's got a small gauze filter in it as well, and it's that small gauze filter that had got blocked, because of course the first primary filter that you have on the bulkhead is quite a beefy thing and would deal with a small bit of, you know, debris like that, and then you've got other filters on the engine itself, but it had blocked the gauze filter in the facet pump, which I've got in line for priming the system, so that if I ever have to drain the system down, I can, you know, run this facet pump and pull fuel up from the tank to the engine to the injectors, which seems like a great idea. But of course it's got a little filter, and you only need to pick up something little to block a little filter. So that's something to address. The long and the short of it is the engine didn't start, and the RNLI felt, yeah, they could have sailed in, absolutely, no problem at all, but they were there on scene. The skipper of the boat had been airlifted off. They didn't know the capability of the crew. You know, an actual fact, Andy and Jack, super capable crew and could have sailed all the way in, and they even said, look, we don't need towing in, we're quite happy to sail in, we might just need some assistance at the other end if the engine won't start, getting onto a pontoon. But they said, no, let's not mess about, let's just tow you in and get you sorted. So they were towed into Milford and put on a waiting pontoon, and then a few days later we moved the boat back into Milford Haven Marina. I was discharged from hospital about 24 hours later, and felt pretty miserable and pretty crap. Still had chest pain, but was very relieved it definitely wasn't a heart attack, and it was just this virus that was, or this inflammation around my heart.
Eventually I got a phone call from Andy Darlington and Jack to say that they were tied up in Pembrokeshire Dock and they were in the yacht club. Just knowing that they were sat in the yacht club, and Jack told me that one of our followers, Cheryl, came down to check on him and make sure he was okay, which I really appreciated. So I knew that Jack was in safe hands, and the fact that they were in a yacht club and Andy Darlington was going to get them pizza sort of made me feel a lot better. I discussed with Jack whether I should just come and get them now, straight away. And by the time I got there, because it would have been a 4-hour drive, it would have been about midnight. And I wasn't sure whether I should then take them straight back to the Midlands or stay on the boat. So we made the decision between Andy Darlington, Jack and I that I would come first thing in the morning. So I left at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and get them.
So the main thing I've got to do is say how proud I am of Jack and the way he handled this. You would think that it would be a really traumatic thing for him, and both Melissa and I have sat down and spoken to him at length about the whole event and what happened, and, you know, thinking, well, he's going to say he's fine, but is he really? And we've really sort of spoken to him at great length about this, and he has handled it incredibly well, not remotely fazed. He was worried about me, for sure, but he wasn't scared about the boat scared of sinking or anything like that. It didn't traumatize him in the slightest. And because we were in contact, I was able to let them know fairly quickly that, you know, it wasn't a heart attack and, you know, I wasn't going to die or anything like that. So I'm so proud of Jack. It's an absolute flaming mill pond. He says, nearly falling off the boat. Life jackets. Yeah, we're crossing St Bride's Bay. The recent chest pain episode I had has really shaken me up. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend winter building up my confidence again. I'm not saying it's like killed my confidence, but it shook me up, you know, and I just need to, I feel like I need to get back on the bike. I'm not just going to, you know, I'm not giving up sailing or anything like that. So what does that mean for me moving forward? Well, it means I need to spend more time back here, back in the mountains, on the lakes, on the sea, rebuilding my fitness, starting from scratch. I've got to start slow because I'm still not particularly well, and I'm not starting today because it's pouring with rain. There's only two things in this life that you can control: your own thoughts and your own actions. I can't control anything else. So it's good to reflect on what happened, and it's good to use that as a springboard to make future decisions. I'm not beating myself up about it, but it was a wake-up call, and I am going to use that experience to inform the decisions that I make from here on. So what does that mean for the YouTube channel? Well, kind of pretty similar, really. It means a kind of back to basics, factory reset. We're going to become more of a sailing channel because I need to be a better sailor. I need to be a physically stronger, emotionally stronger, mentally stronger, and a stronger, better sailor, to make sure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen again. All of those pieces of the puzzle have got to come together. So it's great to be back here, not because we've come back to give up, but because we've come back to improve. This bridge here behind me is the bridge where we threw my brother's ashes, so it's a particularly poignant place for me because it's where I grew up with my brother, learning to sail, learning to climb, and spending all of our time either on the lakes or on the mountains. There are three types of YouTube channel in the sailing world, if you ask me. There's the boat refit channels, which we've done, and that's great. And then there's the liveaboard lifestyle channels, which we've done, and it's okay, but it works much better if you're in Fiji than if you're in, you know, a drizzly town on the south coast of England. And now we're going to become a sailing channel. And that encompasses lots of things. So you're going to see lots more sailing because I want to become a better sailor and Melissa wants to become a better sailor. So we're going to stay in one place for a little while we sort out Melissa's dad and become better sailors. That also means, as I've said, becoming stronger, fitter, healthier, and more mentally resilient in all kinds of things. So yes, it's going to be a sailing channel, but you are also going to see the ways in which we're preparing ourselves. And part of the reason I want to do that and incorporate some of that is for accountability. So I'm sort of accountable to you guys to make sure that, am I sticking to this? You know, am I actually making the improvements that I want to make? I'm not making any grand declarations on I stick to 75 hard or anything like that. Those things are daft. But it was a huge wake-up call and I need to do something about it. So I am doing it. Many thank yous are in order. Thank you so much to Jack, firstly. I love you so much and I'm so proud of you. You handled the situation incredibly well and I couldn't be more proud to call you my son. Thank you to Andy for looking after Jack, looking after the boat, looking after me and handling the situation so professionally and with such, you know, warmth and you just made me feel very, very safe in what was a very scary situation. Thank you to the Angle lifeboat crew, the helicopter crew, and the RNLI generally, who you guys are absolute heroes, total legends. The world is a better place for having organisations like the RNLI in it, and we'll be doing some sort of fundraiser to raise money for Angle Lifeboat. And thank you to Celtic Wildcat for relaying the messages. That was just brilliant. Thank you to everybody that was watching us on AAS and calling Melissa and texting her to see if she was okay. And of course, thank you to Melissa, my amazing wife, who just supported me so well through the whole thing. And finally, thank you to you, our YouTube viewers and subscribers, for your love and your comments and the outpouring of warmth and affection and support that you've shown us through this whole thing. It may not seem like a big ordeal now, but trust me, it was a huge thing for us, and your support meant the world. And thank you to our patrons and coffee supporters and everybody that watches the YouTube channel for keeping the channel going. You're just absolutely incredible. We love you all, and we can't thank you enough. Cheers, guys.
It's so unnecessary.